Hello, I'm Ian and this is Somerset News Network. I haven't talked about reform for a couple of weeks, so I thought I'd give you my update on reform. This is called Reform It Started. The backlash to reform has started by the Conservatives and Labour. They now see them as a real threat. They don't see them as a joke anymore. Farage and Reform are saying what we think. People want a change. And they're not far right. Reform, they're saying, is trying to find the middle ground. But the middle ground only plays into the hands of the uni party, they call it. I call it the Lib Lab Com party, meaning whichever you vote for, you get the same thing. So we've got, as Reform, to be different if they want me to vote for them again. Now, Farage says mostly all the right things. I agree with him 95% of the time, which is more than I did I've never agreed with Labour anyway, but more than I ever agreed with the Tories. I felt that the Tories were too socialist and the Labour was too right-wing. So anyway, that's another story for another day. The Tories and Labour are having a go at reform. And this is the big one. And if there was an election coming up and reform do not change, these two parties will crucify them. They're saying that Reform is not a democratic party. It is owned by two people. It is a company. Now, to start with, I understand why Farage owned Reform. He didn't want the same thing to happen that happened with UKIP and with the Brexit Party. They brought in people and he was basically ousted. They changed the dynamics of it. So that this wouldn't happen, Nigel Farage owned Reform. And it's Reform UK Limited. I can understand why he did it, was to stop the party being infiltrated and changing it. But what he's done, he's sold half of his shares to the chairman. The chairman's ex-Conservative. They've brought in Conservative head office staff to head up the headquarters of Reform. I find that odd. I think it's a recipe for disaster. And the way Rupert Lowe was treated shows that there are dark forces within Reform trying to bring it down. That's what it's all about. And I don't think Farage has got a clue. So the other parties are saying that it's not a democratic party. The Labour Party and the Conservatives all vote for their members vote for their leaders. Now Reform has said, Nigel Farage has said, that they're going to go democratic. They're going to have members instead of supporters, because originally you were a supporter of Reform. Now you're a member of Reform, but you still can't vote for a leader, which I think has got to happen, so that the other two main parties, the Conservatives and Labour, then can't use that at a general election against you. It's simple stuff. It ain't rocket science. If Farage stood for leadership, most of the members would vote for him. I think that some of the people that have been forced out of UKIP and Brexit Party and Reform, like Habib and Rupert Lowe, should be brought back in. The Reform Party should be reformed. It should be a coalition of ideas and thoughts. Because they all think, 99.9% of the time, they think the same. They have the same ends for the country. What gets me is, why does the people around Farage want these people out? And I think it's because the black forces behind Reform have been found out by Rupert Lowe and Ben Habib and others. And Jeffrey Bloom I put into that list as well. And Cox, who was going to be the candidate for the mayoral election, he's out. He seems a good bloke. They're talking the whole counties, constituency, county committees that have formed naturally from the people have been sacked by Reform headquarters. Now, is that these dark forces at work? Or were these people that bad that they needed to go? I don't know the answer. One candidate put himself up, he got accepted, then he was sacked, and the headquarters of Reform parachuted somebody else in. Now this is what the Conservatives and Labour Party do. My constituency here in North Somerset had Liam Fox parachuted in to this constituency because it was a safe Tory seat, because he was one of Maggie Thatcher's speechwriters. He turned out to be a good MP. He was a good constituency MP. I got on well with him. But when the people rejected Sunak, because I don't think they really rejected Liam Fox, because he was a good constituency MP. They rejected the Conservative Party under Sunak because it had become left-wing. You couldn't tell the difference between the Conservatives and Labour. Well, the last thing Reform want to do is try and take the centre ground and sound more like Labour and the Conservatives to take their seats. That means they'll be split in their thoughts. They'll be playing to the centre right for Conservatives and playing to the centre left for Labour. And it don't work. Reform has to be its own party. It says it wants to be the common sense party. Well, let's not Reform lose common sense. Let's allow the members to vote on a leader. I think it also ought to be allowed to vote on a chairman. And I think the chairman and the leader have to be MPs. And Reform must reform. That's what I keep saying. I'd like to see Rupert Lowe back in. I don't think he's done anything wrong. What happened to the report that was supposed to be coming out? They say the QCs walked away because they were releasing information before she'd even made a report. What's the truth there? I don't know. I'm only asking the questions. No way to run a party. You know, they say all's love in fair and war and politics. Not when it comes to Reform. Reform is supposed to be the common sense party. So let's have some common sense. Let's bring people into the fold. You've got Lawrence Fox, the actor, I think he should be in the fold. Tommy Robinson can be a supporter, but I don't think he can be a candidate because he's been in prison. I'll have to find out if he can or he can't. It's got to be a coalition of right of centre. That's what the people are looking for. They're looking for an alternative from the Lib Lam Com party. If Reform try and be more like Labour and Liberal and Conservative to get those votes, they will in the end lose. People ain't daft. I want to support Reform. It's saying what I think. But the way they've treated Rupert Lowe, I'm keeping them at arm's length at the moment. And as a reporter and a commentator on politics, being independent allows me to do this. Because if I became a member of Reform and I started having a go at them, they'd throw me out. I tried to see the friend of mine who's in Reform. I said, I'm thinking about joining Reform. He said, they won't have you. I said, why? Because you support Tommy Robinson and Rupert Lowe. I said, what? Why can I not support Tommy Robinson as a political prisoner? Oh, Reform won't like that. I don't think you'll be allowed to be a member. Well, this is what's wrong with Reform. They're acting like the other two parties. They've got to be allowed to have people with different points of view. We've got to have a common goal and agree with the common goal. And that's to change British politics. And revote him out. I don't want you because you support Tommy Robinson. That's old politics. Let's have new politics. Let's allow people to have a different point of view, but mostly you agree. You have to agree with a party on most of the issues. There might be one or two that you disagree on. But because you don't agree with everything, that you can't join a party, that's defeating the object of being a democratic party. So, Reform. Sort yourself out. And then I might think about joining. Anyway, Ian, Somerset News Network. Bye-bye for now.